us is Ruth Large. Ruth, welcome. Now, your talk today, you kind of had a great introduction opening where you talked about your life as a health officer, and you worked in sort of an outback area of Australia where you were faced with an emergency of a young child, and the only point of access you had was a telephone back then. So that was a really, really interesting opening. And today you talked, but your topic today was about the art of healing from a distance, and you sort of talked about the overview of the past and the presence of telehealth in New Zealand. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right, Karen.
Yeah. So can you tell me a bit more about your background? Because I know the health officer part, but you've got another part of your life as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I'm an emergency physician. I received my fellowship in 2007, and I'm also a rural hospital medicine doctor. So I'm dual fellowed. And I've been the clinical director for Thames Hospital for the last 5 or 6 years, seems like a long time now. And just last year I've been the clinical director for the virtual healthcare for the Waikato District Health Board, and I'm also the deputy chair of the New Zealand Telehealth Forum. So obviously I've got a very big interest in telehealth.
Obviously. Yeah. And your talk was really good today. You kind of gave us a visualization, step through kind of approach of different types of telecommunications that we've had since the beginning, really. Yeah. I mean, you opened it with the Treaty of Waitangi and connected it to Māori and the signing, and how during that time as well there was the first hospital. It was more
that's
of a village
in the 1840s. That's right, around about the same time the Treaty of Waitangi was signed. Yeah.
And then can you talk me through the rest of it from there?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I always have a bit of difficulty remembering the dates, but I think to me, it's putting things into context. You know, we forget quite often we're attached to our cell phones and we watch the television, and there's all this huge amount of technology now that we use that wasn't available certainly when I was a young thing growing up. And if you take it right back to the 1900s, that was in the early 1900s was when we had the Wireless Telegraph Act in New Zealand, and that was the first time in the world that somebody had legislated to protect our ability to wirelessly transmit information without interference. So that was, I guess, that was key, and that preceded obviously things like the telegraph and the telephone, which obviously were not invented in New Zealand, but. If you follow things through from that birth of the first cable that was put through, from Botany Bay in Sydney to Cable Bay in Nelson, and how all of that engineering has played a part in modern video conferencing, and that to me is really interesting. But the crucial bits for me is that development of medicine, and as you say, the Treaty of Waitangi is such an important part of that, around about the same time as we established our hospitals. And then, if you look at how medicine has developed along with the medical politics, you can see why we're in this sort of situation, a very complex situation in New Zealand, particularly regarding technology and the disparity between district health boards.
And that's something I've sort of been picking up while I've been at this conference, is the advances of the technology. How are we keeping up with it from a political or policy making point of view? And like the Medical Council, for example, we've got to keep up to play with the advances that we're making so fast.
That's right, and there's been a lot of talk, as you know, at this conference about security and all of these things which we've never really had to worry about before. This conversation that you and I would have outside of cameras would be a nice secure environment, except for the cameras. But now we've got them. And it's now who owns that information, and in fact, I was just listening to Nigel Miller talk about data and who owns the data, and his response to a certain extent was, well, it's just a whole lot of zeros and ones, and nobody really owns that data. But the question is who has access to it. And I guess although the patients actually own that data, we all need to have some access to it in terms of provision of care. And you're absolutely right, it's very difficult to actually keep up, in terms of policy and legislation, and prescribing is a really good example of that, telehealth is a really good example of that. And we have to balance patient safety, patient access to healthcare, and doing the right thing. And most of us kind of know what that right thing is, but the basic tenet of medicine, of course, is first do no harm. And I guess that has to guide all of our practice as we take this through.
I guess we're going to have to rewrite the patient rights as well, because one of the is information protection, isn't it? Is there anything in there about virtual or telehealth information?
Actually, I don't know that. An answer to that question in terms of the Code of Rights. I mean, that certainly looks at accessibility and protection of your information. But I think a lot of these things are just so new, and legislation itself takes a long time to change. So we can change a lot of things like, with the New Zealand Medical Council, we can talk to them about their policies and their standards and their guidelines. But legislative changes, are so much more difficult.
Yeah,
they take years.
I was going to say, it's probably not moving as quickly as technology is.
No, it really isn't.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about moving to something like this. Back from when you had the brick.
That's right, and it's amazing, isn't it, to think that that's less than 20 years. I mean, the smartphone's been around since 2006, and look how it's changed all of our lives.
And everyone's using one.
Everyone's using one, and part of the thing we also have now is applications are so easy to design. And teenagers are coming through designing these things, and then what happens is you get this huge smashing of applications. Now, how do you decide what works, what doesn't? And for your average patient, in fact, well, for me, it's there's so much out there. How do you choose what the right thing is to do? And you can end up with just this wealth of information. Trying to trawl through it's really, really hard.
It's like having a TV with multiple channels. In a way, it's sort of like which one do you use or which one do you watch?
And it can be very distracting as well. And we were talking before in one of the sessions about. That downtime that we used to have. You used to sit with your colleagues and maybe have a cup of coffee if there was a patient who didn't turn up to a clinic. Well, now you have a patient who doesn't turn up to the clinic, and with these sort of things like the virtual DHB stuff that we've done, we've got an application now where you could spend that time actually answering patient questions or emailing, and is that a good use of your time? You really need to think very carefully about how you're structuring that, because it still is giving patient information and important to keep your patient safe and important to keep you from burning out as well as a clinician.
And I guess with having new advances in technology is also the issue with patients can access you.
That's right.
They, almost 24/7 now. They can be on demand and be requesting this information or requesting services. So there is the issue of burnout.
That's absolutely right. And I think for patients too, there becomes an over-reliance on and an over. Almost like an over-body scanning of the symptom must mean. There's a lot of press, there's a lot of, you can Dr. Google stuff, and all of a sudden you go from a headache to a brain tumour. And that doesn't do anybody any good.
The very common presentations, isn't it, when they say, I've been looking on Google. And
that's right, absolutely right. And years gone by, you'd phone Granny, and Granny would say, oh look, baby's just got a fever, that's fine, just keep him in bed. Oh, he's just tripped over something. You see how he goes in the next 24 hours. But we don't have grannies who do that anymore, I don't think.
Okay. So where are you seeing, I guess it's quite a hard question, but where are you seeing telehealth advancing to? Like say 10 years time, is that too long?
Well, no. I mean, I guess where would I like to see it advancing to? For me, there's two things I would like to see. The one is that we have a business as usual model where telehealth is just a mode of health delivery, and it's lovely to come to conferences like this where we hear all about telehealth, but actually to a certain extent I would hope that it's become so mainstream in another 10 years that we actually don't need these sort of things, because it's actually the way we deliver the care, not necessarily how we do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you kind of want it to be a part of a natural integration,
That's right.
Virtual clinics are just a normal thing.
And I think having patients actually be able to have some sort of choice in how they have that care delivered, an informed choice. I guess the thing which scares me the most is just the huge volume that is out there and helping the patients navigate through these things, and we spend an awful lot of energy recreating the same thing in each place, and this is why I think it's important to understand how the District Health Board sort of came to be, and why we're in the position that we are, because for so long we've had District Health Boards which have been basically effectively told to develop their own IT, and within that space telehealth has grown up, and none of this talks to each other. So gosh, I really hope that within the next 5 years my video conference system will link with John Garrett's system in Christchurch. I mean, I still can't do that.
Yeah. It's amazing how it's a device that's used for communication, yet we still don't talk to each other.
That's right. We've just made it so hard. We need to be vendor agnostic, and that's really. And that's easy for me to say as a clinician, but I don't want to have to worry about who's supplying me the tech, as long as the tech that I've got talks to somebody else's tech. And certainly I'd like to see things like e-prescribing. That would be great. I certainly hope we see that within the next 5 years.
Yeah, there's a few challenges out at the moment with that, isn't there? But
sure
I'm hoping that they would advance as we advance in the technology as well. We'll see how that goes.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, it was lovely talking to you, Ruth. Thank you for coming in and having a chat with us.
Thanks for the opportunity.